Okay, fair call. I am an amateur historian, not a scientist. If history is any barometer, then the period in New Zealand between 1870 and 1910 saw the greatest number of noteworthy major storms and floods. It was effectively disaster after disaster up and down the country, often followed by angry victims venting their spleens and papers along the lines. The destruction could have been prevented. We've been urging the council and the government to do something for years. Sound familiar? In 1863, 40 or so would die in the snowstorms and floods down south, not including those who perished at sea. I happen to have done a relating video to that, which I'll put at the end. Then, for good measure, that year there was a 7.2 earthquake centred on Farewell Spit, plus New Zealand's largest ever recorded tsunami struck the east coast of the North and South Islands, killing Maori on the Chathams on the way through. Little wonder, way back in the waybacks, the citizens were worried about their lives and livelihoods. Look for the answer as to why these crappy weather events were occurring with annoying regularity. Sunspots and ice at the poles regularly popped up as an explanation on that front. The first suggestion in New Zealand newspapers I could locate, proposing that the climate was being affected by the actions of humans, namely deforestation, was way back in 1892. So you'll see from the following press cuttings and related photos, climate change in one form or another has been a regular topic in the press for 135 years. Over the same period, coastal residents have expressed anxiety over the oceans eroding their properties. The poles have also been melting, apparently, for over a century. McMurdo Base by now should be a nudist colony. Camels should be our main transport option, water rationed to 2 glasses a day. Give me any decade in the country's history, and I'll find you at least one, if not more, so-called record floods, rainfalls, temperatures, hailstones, etc., you name it. Cyclone Gabrielle is therefore far from an unprecedented climatic event it's painted to be, nor can anthropogenics explain why the country has suffered these climatic events with such regularity in the past. If only Kiwis had updated their Instagram pages way more back then, they could explain to us today how it was noticeably cooler 100 plus years ago. Where I live, there were major crippling snowstorms in 1862, 1863, 1893, 1895, 1901, 1908 and 1918, etc., etc., etc. On 4 of those years, where there were snowstorms in the south and north, there are also unrelated major floods up and down the country. Needless, we are talking back at a stage when greenhouse emissions had to be a fraction of 1% they are today. All down to those horses and trams, I guess. And if all those natural disasters weren't enough to cause sleepless nights for Kiwis, 120 years ago there was a bubonic plague outbreak to contend with. Bags get COVID. And poor buggers in the trenches would have gladly swapped warmer weather back home versus a German shell lobbed in their direction. Therefore, the New Zealand history books indicate, regardless of what the likes of India and China do to reduce their greenhouse emissions, major unprecedented storms will beset our lands now and again. We just need to build the infrastructure to deal with them, which so far, despite the pounding after pounding we've had, we haven't seemed to learn the lessons from the past, which only seem to exist within the span of residents' memory or TikTok feed. This is in no way to downplay the destruction and suffering in the recent cyclone. After all, I do live in a city which was ruined in an earthquake. The lady across the road has only just got her drainage fixed last week. Without sounding like a broken record, and catastrophic weather events are normal for New Zealand. all we can do is mitigate their effects. Our grandparents also looked for an explanation in the hope a solution would lead to less angst, boxed on, rode down swollen streets, watched cows swim by, lived to tell the tale. Today, the pubs are still open. McDonald's never seem to be short of clientele, nor running out of patties. If you're more interested in this subject, perhaps look online at papers past. Unfortunately, if you are a journalist or politician, it's actually written in invisible ink and you won't be able to view it, but for the rest of you, it's just available there, plonked in front of your eyeballs. And better still, and go to your local library. In the regional N.Z section, pick out a dusty old book on local history and look in the index under storm, flood, that sort of thing. Every second picture in that book will feature an event where someone lost an eye. The rest of the video from here on in are more relating historic photos and press clippings, hammering home my points. I will tempt fate and keep the comments open, at least to start with. If you know someone who is challenged psychologically at the prospect of cataclysmic climate events occurring at some time in the future, not keen on reading books, make sure they get to see this video. It may be reassuring for them to know we've been there, done that.